Welcome to Public Expression. I'm your host, Kenneth Raimondi. Worked in the public sector for about 24 years with the Air Force. And when it came time to change roles and do something different, I always say I didn't stray far from the farm. I do love the work that public sector professionals do, and I deeply understand the importance of it. And this is now our third episode of the podcast. And so far, I hope you're enjoying it. We've had some really great guests so far. Today, we have somebody who is an interesting guest to me because we crossed paths when we were active duty in the Air Force and really never, again, actually worked together, which is something that I'm starting to put together. Happens a lot. But we did become very close, when COVID kicked off, and we used to just have all kinds of conversations just about the craft and the work and ways to stay creative and stay motivated. And, it's interesting because I feel like these little tidbit conversations I've had throughout my career are definitely what motivated me to do this. Being around other creatives and being surrounded by people that have good ideas or that challenge you, and then you leave and you go back to your office and it's like, oh, I'm alone again. And I know how that feels, and that's tough. Let's bring Darren Scott to the podcast. How you doing, man?
Hey, Ken, I'm doing really well. Doing good, man. Thank you so much for inviting me to come up here with you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. You and I have a interesting working relationship in the fact that we've only really been in the same room for a few days, but we've been very close, I guess through distance for quite a few years. In fact,
Yeah,
during COVID, especially.
absolutely. Well, I think you and I connected, with our backgrounds and just kind of our similar sort of pathways into kind of getting where we were when we met. And so, yeah, we had a lot to talk about, a lot to connect on personally and professionally. So, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, it's
Well,
been
and
great.
a general obsession with the craft, I think.
That's a good way to put it. Obsession is the right term for that.
I always start off with the most hard hitting question right off the top because I like to make you uncomfortable.
Oh, lovely.
So I hope you're ready for this.
Yeah, let's do
Uh,
it.
I have noticed a change in my career. Okay. When I was coming up, it was coffee. Everybody had their morning coffee. And then that started to switch over to energy drinks. So my question to you is energy drinks or coffee?
Coffee, 100%. Yeah, no, I did energy drinks in college, and I was not good for me. I am an adult with ADHD, and so the energy drinks were not good. On top of the stimulants I was already taking. But no, I it's I think at this point it's probably less the need for caffeine and more like ritual or
Mm.
routine, or maybe that I would suffer from caffeine withdrawals. Uh, but definitely coffee.
Old
Yeah.
school. I like it. Yeah, me too. I'm a coffee guy. I mean, I do caffeine doesn't have a huge effect on me, but I definitely enjoy just that hot cup of coffee in the morning.
Really does start. Yeah, it really starts the morning. Either, yeah, it's coffee and then sometimes a cup of tea, like black tea or of some sort after that.
Oh,
If I'm
refined.
feeling particularly tired, wild and color fine bags, cheap bags of black tea. But yeah, no, I sort of wonder if there's part of that that comes from like wearing uniform is like coffee. Everybody having their morning cup of coffee was like not just a routine; it was like such a thing in my first shop.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.
And that is how we first met, right? I mean, we both were active duty Air Force at one time, and then after my uniform service, I worked for the Air Force for like 10 years or something like that as a civilian. I got to do the math; it's getting too many numbers now for my head to compute. Um, and I know you had a similar path. You were active duty, but then tell me about what you did after you left active duty and what your current role is. Give us a little background on your path as a public sector creative.
I mean, and you already know this, but for folks who are listening in, I think my path in terms of getting into production and communications in the military was a little bit backwards. I actually went to film school and learned sort of an old school way of the visual medium, like cinema, that kind of thing. And then I went into the military. But post military, I kind of bounced around for a little while. I had a job doing strictly video production for an insurance company in Salt Lake City, Utah. Which, while the benefits weren't as good as the job I have now, I think that's the one I enjoyed the most because that's all I did. Was I did videos for them, which was super fun. I had a lot of freedom. Um, got to set up a green screen studio, and I did tons and tons and tons of motion graphics and animation, which was really a blast. But after that, I got a job working with the Department of Agriculture with the National Natural Resources Conservation Service. I was a public affairs specialist that oversaw, like you said, some folks in our position are one too deep, right? It was just me for the state. I was over the communications for that agency for the whole state of Utah.
Wow, the whole state.
And that was like everything, right? So that was like social media and digital media and visual media and press releases and briefing papers and the website and all kinds of stuff. And so I found ways to be creative there, but I felt that was a lot. That's a lot to hold up when you're one deep in a shop. And then I got the job. So I did that from, you're not going to believe this, March of 2020. I actually went into the office and was in the office for 1 week, and then we all got sent home for COVID. I had enough time to like get my computer and then go home. So that was an interesting experience. And
What a weird time.
it was really odd. Yeah. So I did that until January of 2022, and then I came and got my current job, which is I now work as a public affairs specialist for the Bureau of Land Management in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
So, public affairs specialist is a very broad term, and we know that in public
Yeah.
sector.
Yeah.
So, tell me about some of the things you do as a public affairs specialist.
Well, right now, my biggest responsibilities are I'm in charge of digital and visual media for the state in Mexico, technically 4 states. We encompass Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, and New Mexico, but primarily New Mexico. I also manage all of our social media platforms, dabble in some website stuff. And then I do some other like outreach type of things, community outreach. And then there's, I mean, you know how it is, right? There's some smatterings of other things in there, like, writing awards packages and stuff like that.
And are you currently supervising anybody?
Nope. No,
Okay,
I
so
am not.
non-supervisory. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is lovely. I am enjoying it very, very much.
It's kind of funny. My last guest was he's a supervisor and he loves it. He loves being a supervisor. But I remember my last stop as a public sector creative was non-supervisory, and I kind of loved it because for me, I got to just focus on the craft, and I still got to work with young airmen, to help motivate, inspire them, and train them. So it was nice being able to kind of be a mentor and not somebody that had to write packages or, make sure that their career path was being taken care of. Like that was a different supervisor that did that. So do you, what are some things you're doing now in your current role that you love? And what are some things that you kind of miss? Because you said, you had a little break in between active duty service and coming into public sector where you kind of were primarily focused on creating video content. Is that something you don't get to do as much now? And are you doing other things?
I am fortunate to have a really, really good boss, right, who's very supportive of what we want to do. There's 4 of us on our team, my boss and 3 others that work for the state office here for the BLM. And she has been really intentional about focusing on our skill sets, right? So I can do press releases, and I do sometimes. I can do briefing papers, and I do that sometimes. But they've divided it up so that my primary responsibilities are social media and visual media. And somebody else on our team really loves the media relations side of things, and so they are primarily in charge of answering public inquiries and press releases, working with news media. And then the third member of our team is our webmaster. They manage all of our internal and external web pages. And so I'm fortunate right off the bat. I got to say, I'm really fortunate to have a boss who supports me in that creative endeavor, who values my work and expertise and who wants me to stay. And so they support me being as creative as I'm able to. And so, I do a lot of video production here. It's a little bit different because our agency manages like 40 million acres of public lands across 4 states, right? A lot of land. And so instead of, a bunch of gear and a crew, it's me with my backpack and my gear, like out in the middle of nowhere. Right. So there's kind of a different demand in terms of my skill set there. But I get to do a lot of videos, which is super fun. I've been doing a lot more graphics animation, like motion graphics lately. And part of that is just I really enjoy it. I really enjoy learning it. And there's a need for it. Right.
Yeah, there's something you said that jumped out at me is like, again, we're talking about the listener, right? The person who happens to stumble across our little podcast here and is hearing this conversation. I hope that they were able to clue into some things you said. One of those is being able to leverage your strength, right? So for me, right, I'm a video guy. I grew up in the video world. I did radio as well. And so even me working for Adobe now, my strength is in Premiere, right? And
Sure.
in the video tools. But I'm doing other things too. I'll talk about Photoshop, Illustrator, all kinds of programs. But you know, I think my boss also knows that use my strengths were their best, right? And so I think
Sure.
that's something that people should kind of clue in on. If you are a manager out there and you have a small team, do your best to leverage the strength of that team. But the teammates have to know that they are working on a small team and they're going to have to step up and help out in other areas, right? That's I think the term when we were active duty was cross pollination or something like that. It's like everybody's got to know everybody else's job kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I still believe in that, but I love the fact that you're getting the opportunity to leverage your passions and like, your expertise in ways that maybe your agency didn't even know were possible before you got there.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on something that is important on two fronts. And the first is that as a manager, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so having a really good understanding of what your team's skills are, because there might be things you have no idea, right?
Mm.
That they are able to do or know how to do or want to know how to do. And that's really important. And I think, secondly, as a media slash communications slash, video, whatever professional, I think taking that step out there to try to advocate for yourself is really important. And I think it's hard because not every boss is receptive to that. But I think it's really important to give that a shot to say, hey, like, have you ever thought about this? I can do this.
Yeah.
So, and that's important on two fronts. One is a manager to, like you said, leverage the skills of the folks that work for you. But second, um, advocating for yourself is hard, but I think really important too.
Well, and I love what you said about advocating for yourself in the areas that you want to do more work in. Again, your boss doesn't know everything, like you said, right? And so if you have a great idea to do something, sometimes you just have to kind of do the work and show it and see where it goes, right? Because if you don't give that kind of proof of concept, maybe to your manager or to your boss, they can't really visualize how that thing can be impactful, right?
Absolutely, and it's risky. There is a chance that they could shoot down your idea or you could get
Mhm.
rejected.
And
But
rejection's tough. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no,
it's tough. No,
continue that thought.
you're right. Rejection is tough, but the flip side of that is, if somebody recognizes that skill set and opens up new doors, I mean, that could be huge in terms of not just experience, but in terms of like job satisfaction, in
Mhm.
terms of like mental health, right? And then in
Yeah,
terms of if that's not the job you're going to be at forever, well, now you're setting yourself up to move into something else that shows those skill sets, right?
yeah. Well, and yeah, and don't give up on a good idea, right? So, like, I think about when I was active duty, I was working for recruiting service, Air Force recruiting service, and I so badly wanted to do a documentary on Air Force basic training, and there just
Mm,
wasn't the will at the time to do it.
yeah.
And it took, fast forward 10 years later, and I happened to have had a client when I was, working as a civilian for the Air Force. And they were like, we want to do a basic training video. And I pitched this whole idea for a documentary, a whole docuseries. And to everybody's shock, the Air Force greenlit it. And we got to make an 8-part docuseries, really showing what basic training was all about. And I mean, that only happened because I never gave up on the idea. I was told no, but the idea never left. So
Yeah.
if you have that golden idea and you presented it to your manager and your manager was like, nope, not doing it, that's hard, right? And you gotta feel the emotional toll that exists, which is, man, that stunk. I really want to do this. But file it away, save it, because guess what? Managers move on, people move on, organizations change, and there may be an opportunity to do that like career defining type project, in a different situation. So let me ask you this: how do you? I guess I have two questions for you. Actually, one of them is, how do you stay up to speed on like what is working in social media and what needs to be moved on from? That's the first part of the question, and then the second part is, how do you stay creative if you're creating content that starts to feel kind of similar to each other?
Yeah, that's a really good question because that's the nature of this career field, right? Is things are always shifting and adapting and changing, and so And it's really easy to be sitting there going like, oh man, I know what I'm doing. And then you look outdated, right? The hard one for me, and this hurt a little bit, and growing up, doing old school film stuff was vertical video, right? Yeah,
I love
transitioning,
it.
yeah,
I love
transitioning
vertical
to
video.
reels. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was hard
It's
for me
just a
at
different
first.
space.
Exactly. And so I think number one, you got to pay attention to what other people are doing, right? Like you just, and I think that's visually as well as in communications, because you know this, right? You can look at not just the technology with which films are made, but the way things are shot, the way things are lit, right? The way film is processed, we record audio, you know, how we do camera movement. Everything has a trend, right? And so I think paying attention to what other people are doing is really important. I'm on a lot of social media at home. I don't post a lot, but I follow a lot of folks on platforms, I mean, that we can't even use here at work. But just paying attention to the way people are saying things and the type of content that people are responding to. And secondly, along with to your first question, is paying attention to the data, because again, the way that people interact with your social media and what people are looking for shifts constantly.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit because we talked about the difference between 16 by 9 and 9 by 16, right? So I I didn't get to work a lot in the vertical space. I had quite a few clients I tried to pitch vertical videos to because and they just, for one reason or another didn't pan out. Now that you've kind of gotten over being the curmudgeon old school film school student who says, "No, it must be widescreen,
Yeah.
Panavision, whatever," how
Yeah.
are you finding vertical video to be interesting? And if so, like how did you overcome, I guess, because we all deal with that, right? We all deal with something changing. We're like, oh no, we can't. Why are we doing this? And you went through that. Now you're living in this space. Tell me how you dealt with that like change and how did you kind of like refocus your efforts?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty big question for me. It's very sort of like conceptual and like existential in a sense. Um, well, because like okay, so the easy answer is I watched creators, right? And there are creators who are doing incredible creative work, stuff that I would have never thought of in a million years.
Mm,
In terms of framing, in terms of cuts, in terms of just the way they're shooting things, um, because my brain didn't work like that, right?
right.
Um, and so part of it was just seeing it happen, watching it, and watching the difference in terms of what you see in the frame and what it draws your attention to, and then how you set up shots because it's completely different, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and then the second part of that, and this is, I think, it may lead to a bigger conversation, is that I think it's partly the way we approach creativity. You pull up your phone, you open up the news, and there's always somebody in the industry talking about, oh, this genre is not art, or like, oh, this movie is not art, or oh, like cinema's ruined and blah, this and that. Or, if we approach ourselves, our community of creators and professionals, with the respect and the idea that everybody is creating, right? That everybody is using their creative energy to bring something different and bring something new to the table, even if it's not what you're used to, then that opens you up to be able to learn how to do so many new different things.
Well, so before you go to the second part of the question, which
Yeah.
was how did you refocus? I do want to pause on that because I love what you said about how everyone's creative. And that is true. Every single human being has got some sort of creativity in them, right? Some are definitely more geared towards art and emotional storytelling. Others are creatively finding solutions to complex problems, but there's creativity in everybody, right? And it's how do you pull that creativity out, and how do you like see that creativity in everything around you? Like
Yeah.
I'm not a car guy, right? I'm not like the dude who's underneath his car working on it that's just not me.
Sure.
But I have this weird ability to tell you when I'm driving at night what car it is based on the headlights or taillights. It's okay. So now
Is
the
that,
reason
is
I
that
know
your
it's weird.
useless superpower?
Oh, one of many.
Yeah.
but the reason for it is because I'm obsessed with the design. Like, either why in the world did they make that look like that? Because that's awful in my opinion. Or wow, that's such a cool like way to have done that. The headlight, like every vehicle has it, but for some reason this company designed it this way, right? Kind of a silly thing, but my point being is that there's creativity everywhere around you,
Yeah.
right? Anyway,
Yeah.
that's my soapbox. I'll get off of it because now I want to
Well,
hear how
no, that's.
you dealt with that change.
I'm gonna stick on that. I'm gonna actually step up onto your soapbox now that you're down for a second.
Yeah, there's
Um,
room. There's room for two.
okay, good. No, okay, I'll come up there with you. My hot take is that cinematographers like Roger Deakins or James Kaminsky, their cinematography is just as valuable as the guy shooting a promotional video for a product at home using a towel as a slider with his phone,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
My hot take is that both of those things are just as creative and just as valuable in terms of art.
I love it. Yeah. Now,
I,
see,
I mean,
this is why
you
we're
know.
friends. This is why I like you.
Well, thank
No,
you. I appreciate it.
I totally agree. Man, this is like the fastest 25 minutes of my life. We're actually coming close to the end of our time here,
Oh no!
unfortunately.
All
I
right. Do you
know.
have more questions you got to get to?
I
Oh, you wanted
do.
to. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I do. I still. Well, you're probably about to answer, but I did still want to hear how you, I guess, were able to make that switch and embrace a different format than what you were comfortable filming in before.
Yeah. Um, I think part of it was looking at our metrics, going back to the data again, right? Because people were interacting much more with our reels, our vertical videos, than they were with our other ones. Now, it doesn't mean I never post them. Sometimes you just can't get away from the format, especially if it's sort of like a longer form kind of thing, or if it's something that somebody else produced. But part of it was looking at the data, going like, "Hey, we got to change something here because people are really responding to this other format." And then kind of like you have to do sometimes, I started trying it.
Yeah.
Um, and the first couple attempts were kind of dumb. They were kind of lame, right? But then I sort of started practicing a little more, paying attention to how other content creators structure their reels and how they cut and how they shot, how they move the
Hmm.
phone, how they move the camera. Um, and so it's been improving steadily over time. But I think it's going back to what I said. It's that willingness to step out and acknowledge that, one, things are changing. Two, everything is creative. And then I'm not limiting myself to my own, whatever my view was previously.
And I think the other thing that you really haven't said out loud, but I'm taking from what you're saying, we can't pretend to change the way an audience receives their media, right? So the idea that because we want to be all on our high and mighty, mountaintop or soapbox, whatever you want to call it, to say,
Right.
you must turn the phone around if you're going to experience this the way it was meant to be experienced. And then the user is sitting there like, skip, I'll go watch the next video. you know?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
well said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that was well said.
you have to meet them where they are and create the content, and because there's just too much competition out there, right? I mean, everybody can create something and get it out there, and there's a freedom to that, but there's also obviously a heavy competition in that. And so for you, somebody who has to communicate to a very important public sector audience, I'm glad that we have people like you sitting in the seat that you're sitting in, because you're not just going to sit on your laurels and say, well, if they didn't find it, that's on them. Well, no, your job is to make sure that the public is informed about things that matter to them. And this is why, every one of these episodes, I always make the point to say thank you, because I know how important it is, the work that you do. And I know that you're often doing it against tough deadlines with limited resources. But the work that you're doing is so important. And so thank you for doing that. And man, thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Hey, those words were very kind. Thank you very much. I think I could talk about this for days and days and days. So very happy to be here talking about it with you, man. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Hope that was as much fun for you as it was for me chatting with Darren. He is always a very insightful person, and I could probably spend just hours. In fact, I have spent hours talking to him about things like we did today. So, again, thanks for listening to Public Expression. My name is Ken Ramondi, and we'll see you in the next episode.